Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 72. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. The schedule's gotten kind of funky, just like the real-life Pittsburgh Steelers schedule, but with the Mike Tomlin press conference being held on Monday, now that we know the Steelers will officially play the Bengals on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, have the schedule bumped up a day and kind of move some pieces around. So, Dave, plenty to talk about today. How you doing?
Yeah, last show of 2024. Did you ever, I just thought about this, the bad thing about going from year to year, or used to be, was remembering to change the year when you write a check. Have you ever written a check in your life?
Yeah, I occasionally do. And also, I know where you're going. Yes, I would, for the first month, I would completely write the previous year. And even on things like homework assignments or things in school where you had to put the dates, I would constantly have just completely the wrong date for the first month of January.
Oh, okay. Well, luckily I was just barely out of school. I don't remember having, well, I guess in grades, on up, you had to actually put dates on papers. I don't remember even having to do that.
Put your name and put your date. You didn't do that? Well, you didn't go to class. So I don't know if this counts.
I don't know if that's I can't remember having to do that through high school and all. But and speaking of, I don't know how we got on this, I guess the new year and all like that, but I can't even tell you the last time I wrote a check at this point, because checks have become so, kind of so obsolete. Everything's either auto debited or something along those lines. Anyhow, last show of 2024, heading on into 2025, and the Steelers will play the Bengals on Saturday night. I don't think we have firm confirmation on who's going to be calling that game, although all signs point to Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and Lisa Salter. I mean, they gave out a lot of hits last night during that Monday Night Football game, but yeah, I suppose we'll find out absolutely today that they'll be calling that game on Saturday night for ESPN ABC.
Mm-hmm. The Steelers have gotten a reality check, but with the 3-game losing streak, they'll try to break against the Bengals on Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And so we discussed this during the last podcast, Dave. It all made sense for Pittsburgh to play that night game. No, it's nobody's favorite to have to deal with one more night game, but if Pittsburgh wins, they can play it at 3 a.m. on Wednesday for all I care. Right now, the Steelers just need a victory and to have at least something to hang their hat on, secure at least the 5 seed, and go into the postseason not on a 4-game losing streak.
How surprised were you that they put the Ravens game against the Browns? This stinks of hard knocks, does it not?
That's a good point. I hadn't really considered that. That makes some sense. I don't know if the NFL is completely adhering their schedule to Hard Knocks. I'm sure Hard Knocks appreciates it. I was surprised just because it's not a super competitive game. It feels like that's like peak Sunday 1 p.m. for the regular season finale type of matchup between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And of course, the Steelers will know exactly what they have to play for by the time they kick off. If Baltimore beats Cleveland and the Steelers cannot win the AFC North, there is some seeding implication, and so there is still something to play for, but Pittsburgh will know by 8 p.m. whether or not they can have a chance at climbing back into that division lead and taking the crown or not.
We'll obviously are about to discuss this and all, and not like it. I don't think either one of us expects it to happen, but they did at least put the Steelers in a position where they, if they so decided and wanted to, were more concerned about health instead of opponent, that it had, if the Ravens beat, which they probably will, beat the Browns in the early game, it would give the Steelers the option of just mailing it in, not I'm not suggesting they do that. I don't think they're going to do that. It was just odd to see that be the other game is what I'm getting to before the Steelers play the Bengals Saturday night. It makes a lot of sense to put the Steelers on Saturday, and we discussed that the other show there. But I don't know. I was just a little bit surprised that why not put the Chargers and the Raiders in that earlier game. I suppose because it's West Coast, maybe why they didn't do it there, but at least because you could get the Chargers in this more of a situation too of them deciding, hey, we're the sixth, we're going to be the sixth seed. Why do we even need to play our starters against the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of dive right on in, and this came up during Mike Tomlin's press conference on Monday, was the theory of, is there a potential for him resting his starters if we assume that Baltimore beats Cleveland and they capture the AFC North and Pittsburgh doesn't have that to play for? Would he potentially rest some guys? And Tomlin said, A, he hadn't thought about it much, and B, he'd be unlikely to go that route, did at least leave that door open to occur. But I would still contend that Pittsburgh has something to play for in this game, even if, and assuming the Baltimore wins, there is still, like I mentioned, the seeding element where Pittsburgh loses to the Bengals and the Chargers beat the Raiders, something more likely to happen than not, and Pittsburgh drops to the 6th seed. They go to Baltimore on wildcard weekend. If Pittsburgh wins, they're the 5 seed. They go to Houston. Now, I'm not trying to pick matchups. I think if you try to do that, you tend to get burned. Be careful what you wish for kind of thing. But I think just at a principle for seeding, and then just the fact that Pittsburgh needs a victory. They cannot be on a 4-game losing streak. They have to prove they can play well for their own well-being and own confidence and own just kind of, not momentum, but just to have something to feel good about going into the postseason. This is not a rest your starters kind of game.
Right, especially after losing 3 straight. And, Mike Tomlin talked about got to get the stench off of us. And, they obviously haven't played great on both sides of the football in these last 3 games overall. It makes all the sense of the world of trying to get yourself right heading into the playoffs. And, yeah, some momentum, some just feeling better about where you're at heading into this thing. And then, if you do win this game, the whole be careful what you wish for thing, I get that, but you would probably much rather go play a Texans team that have had their problems on the road in the wild card game than you would possibly a hot a team in the Ravens in Baltimore. So yeah, I don't think they gave much thought into thinking that Mike Tomlin would potentially rest his starters. It'd be one thing if they were locked into a playoff spot and been playing well, for or a seeding spot and been playing well, in a couple of these last 3 games, but they haven't been. But yeah, I would be absolutely shocked. Now, look, if you get into this Bengals game and you're getting shellacked or you're doing the shellacking, boy, wouldn't that be nice to see happen? Mm-hmm. Maybe you pull some guys out late in the game they actually did that with some linemen, offensive linemen late in this game against the Chiefs, but they still left Russell Wilson in the game on top of it there. But long story short, Mike Tomlin's going to play to win this game.
Yeah, that's my expectation, and that's the correct move. Pittsburgh has not, quote unquote, earned the right to rest some guys in this game. Had they won some more games, maybe they'd be in that position. Had they clinched the AFC North, then they probably could do that in this game. They did not, and so they should play their starters and play this game to win because they need a win. All right, Dave, let's talk about Mike Tomlin's press conference. What else he discussed from a health standpoint? Pittsburgh seemingly in a pretty good place. Obviously, the longer official will be a 10-day layoff from the Christmas Day game to the Saturday game is helping this team and getting some guys back. Tomlin saying that Joey Porter Jr., who had a knee issue, and wide receiver Ben Skoranek with a hip injury, those guys missed the Chiefs game. They are scheduled to play against the Bengals. The first injury report will come out on Tuesday, so it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. By the Friday show, we'll know exactly what the game status is for everybody. But Pittsburgh really should be, fully healthy for this game. Also, Justin Fields, Tomlin said, should come back as well.
Yeah, that's good news there. You obviously didn't have Porter or Skoranek in that last game against the Chiefs, and Justin Fields was inactive again, so he should be back as the backup there. It does already. It's still early in the week. One other aspect, real quick, about this shorter week is in a way it does kind of hurt the Bengals. From minor situation there. They've got Chase Brown at running back dealing with that ankle injury. I think Ian Rappaport or someone said what, high ankle, I believe. And with them playing on Saturday and not Sunday, that gives one less day for him to kind of recover. I don't think they're too much of a banged up team. Other than that, we'll obviously see Tuesday afternoon when their first injury report comes out. But it does kind of give the Bengals one less day, and obviously the Steelers are on a little bit longer week, having played on Wednesday last week there. So I think the only really kind of thing to watch here moving forward in this week when it comes to the Steelers is can they indeed get these guys back practicing? I think he said that Warren and Cory Trice Jr. might be limited early portions of the week, but should be available come game time there. Most of the inactives feel like they should be pretty easy to come up with even at this point early in the week here. There will be a little bit of question maybe about who the last one is. If Justin Fields is back, Kyle Allen will obviously be the third quarterback inactive. You would expect if Skoronek's back, Scotty Miller to be inactive. You would think Dean Lowry would be down again. So that's three of them. I don't know. Preston Smith, you might make him inactive again. Like was the case this past week. So that's number 4. And then you come up to the curious, if everybody's healthy there, who would be the 5th inactive there? And I'm just saying, and people will be upset if this ends up happening, and understandably so. You do kind of wonder if Cory Trice Jr. might be a healthy scratch for this one with Porter back. If you ended up dressing all of your cornerbacks for this one, you do kind of struggle a little bit coming up with a 5th and final inactive.
Yeah, you do. I hadn't thought about it too much, and we'll just have to see if any injuries pop up along the way. Yeah, it's a fair point. I know Pittsburgh. I want to see who they dressed in that first Bengals game. I don't know exactly what the health situation was of the team back then. I mentioned they're going to want to try to have extra DBs to have some options in case of injuries for that Bengals potent passing attack. So we'll see. But it's a fair point. It's the one downside to a healthy team overall. Got some tougher decisions when it comes to who will not dress for a particular game.
When you do look back at that game against the Bengals, it is kind of important to remember that they did not have Alex Highsmith for that game. Remember, they did have Jonathan Ward still on the 53-man roster at the time. They did have an extra offensive lineman, one more than they have now as well. So, and I don't believe
Trice was still on.
Yeah, Trice was coming off of IR, I think, at the time, because Calvin Anderson was still on the 53-man roster. Their inactives for that game were Kyle Allen, Scotty Miller, Jonathan Ward, Alex Highsmith, and Max Sharping. So, let's see.
Yeah, we can't learn a whole lot. I mean, we could swap out Highsmith for Smith and that kind of stuff, but still really probably can't draw many conclusions from that.
Right, exactly. So it will be interesting though, because assuming the roster stands pat, the health situation works out, who the final inactive will be.
Today, Mike Tomlin noting that the day after the game, the Chiefs lost, Pittsburgh came together, had a team meeting that seemed to be one part vent session, one part film review. We'll see if Hard Knocks captures that tonight to discuss some of the team's recurring themes and reasons for this losing streak. And so Mike Tomlin, as he's done before, really narrowed it down to not taking care of the football, not taking the football away, those types of things. But it sounds like just as importantly, Tomlin felt the frustration from the players. Obviously, we heard that in the locker room following the Chiefs game, and tried to get the team to come together to air out some Festivus grievances, you could say, and try to reset this defense, this team.
Yeah, he let's see. He said something, he was asked about bickering there. What was his full response to kind of bickering?
For the bickering or like the meeting in particular? Because
Uh
there's two
I
separate
thought he
parts
was
there.
yeah, there are two separate parts. I'm trying to find in
Well, I'll get the bicker part. The Thursday meeting was the very opening comments that he made, but he said, quote, they bicker because they care and we weren't playing well. And oftentimes the solutions are born out of conflict and confrontation, particularly when you're in the business that we're in. And so we're not going to let an issue like that be a big issue. It's really not. Guys expressing truth and working to seek solutions. And sometimes emotions are involved in that. And so most of the time, when you get out of those circumstances, you're able to move on as a collective. And I feel like we certainly have done that, end quote. And so, yeah, I didn't ever see that as this locker room becoming fractured. It was unusual to see the defense really be the one that felt a little messy and a little not gossipy, but share that frustration. That was kind of more of an offensive thing over the last couple of years. But I don't think it's going to be the thing that takes this team down. And I
yeah.
think it's probably good to vent that stuff out. It's an emotional game. It happened in the locker room right after the loss, all that kind of stuff. And so probably smart for Tomlin to try to address it and move forward.
Yeah, and I think it is healthy to just not let that stuff fester. So, I look, they have higher standards than what they definitely put on tape defensively against the Chiefs, and right after that game there were kind of some strong words, and probably rightfully so. People frustrated that they gave up some of the wide open passes that they gave, and due to communication errors, and it probably was good to get. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall to see how all that went down, to see how Mike Tomlin addressed that. And no, I don't think we're going to get a behind the scenes of that on Hard Knocks, which, by the way, is tonight. That probably won't be very entertaining for Steeler fans on the heels of another loss there. But yeah, I mean, I do think it was good for Mike Tomlin to come out and say, that kind of stuff's going to happen, and basically saying you address that stuff head on and get it behind you. So the key thing is here is try to correct those mistakes as quickly as possible, and you really need to against a very sound Bengals offense this week that I'm sure will try to stress you in a lot of the same ways that these last couple of teams have done so, especially at the tight end position.
My review of Hard Knocks is it's gotten progressively worse to watch from a Steelers analyst fan standpoint, getting harder and harder to watch each episode, and tonight probably won't be super enjoyable either. All right, Dave, what else did Mike Tomlin tell and say during his Monday presser that caught your attention?
I was intrigued by his answer on the question about George Pickens and the route that he ran on the Russell Wilson interception.
Yeah, basically absolved Pickens of any wrongdoing. Didn't even really say that Pickens ran the wrong route, and even if he did, Tomlin basically said it didn't. It was not the reason why the play resulted in an interception. So, is that fair? Is that foul? Is it all at this point a moot point? What's your take?
Based, obviously, I don't know the play call exactly, but I just know in my experience and seeing the way it was laid out, and you see other people break this down in the same fashion as well too. It just seems like there should have been a vertical route on that backside to hold the safety in that situation. Ben Roethlisberger, for whatever it's worth, on his podcast, seemed to think that Pickens, should have been running vertical in that situation. We did talk right after the game, and did say, however, that okay, there is a matter of, let's say he was supposed to run a route vertically to hold that safety, backside safety on that play. Russell Wilson, to some degree, has still got to kind of see whether or not that there's there is a trust factor that guy's going to do the right job. But in the same breath, though, you're looking down the barrel there. You should be able to see what that safety, if he's breaking towards the middle of the field or not. So there is a lot of blame to go around. We can get into the minor minutia of could he put the ball in a better place? Should, who was it? Kurt Warner, or I believe said, maybe Freiermuth should have ran that thing and not cut across the far hash, maybe run that a little bit more vertical, yada, yada. I mean, you can dive so deep into that play and still be wrong in certain aspects of it there. Back to the original point here. If George Pickens is not supposed to run vertical on that play, then somebody needs to look at that play design.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I think we've talked about it a lot. I don't have a whole lot else to really add. I just made the point on Monday's show, and I'll repeat it, that Russell Wilson is responsible for taking care of the football and what the coverage is whenever he throws the ball. And I agree that Pickens still probably should have run vertically. That's what Russ was expecting. And so I don't want to put it all on Russ, but he is the quarterback. He is the one responsible for the outcome of the football once he releases. And it was not there, clearly, regardless of whether or not Pickens ran the right route or the safety should have cheated or not cheated, or no matter what happens on the field, all that matters is what was the picture that was painted when Russ threw the football. And it was an ill-advised throw that was obviously costly, that took points off the board after the play before had points come off the board from the holding call on Darnell Washington. So the main idea is you can't have those turnovers in critical red zone moments, and that's happened in 2 straight losses.
Do you believe Mike Tomlin?
I don't know. When it comes to Pickens, he's pretty quick to defend him. Here's my thought on what should have happened. Pickens should have run vertically. Tomlin didn't explicitly say that Pickens ran the right route, just said it was kind of immaterial to the outcome, but Russ still should not have thrown that football. That's really what I think it comes down to.
Let me see if let's read the exact quote from Tomlin when asked about the interception. He talked about the frustration. On if George Pickens broke off his route on the interception versus the Chiefs. Not at all, he says. George's route running had zero to do with that interception. George was fine last Wednesday.
All right, so maybe he does more explicitly say that Pickens ran the right route.
Well, he says on if George Pickens broke off his route. He says, no, not at all. So is he saying, no, he didn't break off his route, that he just got jammed? Or, I guess there's some minor interpretation there, but you do yeah. And then he goes to follow that up, says George's route running had zero to do with that interception. So is he putting it on Russ?
Sounds like it. Who else? It's going to be on somebody, and it's not on Pickens. And obviously Russ threw the football. Maybe it's a Pat Freiermuth kind of thing. I know Kurt Warner talked about the route that Freiermuth ran that Warner didn't love. I would tend to disagree with that. At this point, it probably is not worth examining even more, as we've talked about it a ton since the Chiefs game. The play happened. You move on. The important thing is Pittsburgh cannot continue to have these red zone turnovers.
All right. What else did Mike Tomlin say that caught your eye?
Well, speaking of Pickens, separately did discuss Pickens' frustration. It was asked about Pickens' frustration during the game, and also really, didn't seem too concerned about that. Instead, he saw Pickens in the training room and had a smile on his face and just said frustration is natural, and obviously it comes pretty natural to George Pickens. So again, kind of downplaying those concerns, which again, I'm not critiquing Tomlin for here in that particular sense. I didn't really take a lot of stock of it in game. I think the biggest concern with Pickens' frustration is how it could potentially kind of knock him off his own game and kind of take him out of it, less so than it becoming a problem for anybody else.
All right. What about on correcting mistakes that they feel they should have been that should have been issues earlier in the season? Him saying oftentimes those lapses that you mentioned are occurring because of personnel switches. Deshaun himself has missed a block of games in recent weeks. Dante Jackson has missed some time. Joey Porter has missed some time. And so what you've been looking at are some of those personnel changes that you suggest. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about having all those guys at our disposal in preparation this week. So in other words, he says if one guy misses a game in the secondary, we should worry about communication errors, right?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that more when guys are out, but a lot of guys were back for that Chiefs game in particular. I know Porter missed, but you still had, Dante Jackson and Pierre and, some Cory Trice, and those guys aren't brand new to the Steelers. And frankly, some of those busts weren't even happening on the outside corner. And so I don't know if to me, that was just a classic Tomlin kind of non-answer where it really didn't give you a whole lot to go off of. I do think Pittsburgh's issues are more than just one guy. I know one of the kind of talking points this week is, it's kind of a whodunit. Who's the one Steeler that keeps screwing all of this up? When I think if you look at all the breakdowns, it's impossible to sit there and say it's just one guy. I think it's probably not all 11. I think it's a couple people that seem to be around these mistakes more than others, and some of that just from a natural who plays the most. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, Patrick Queen, Cam Sutton are the three guys that seem to be pretty common across these breakdowns. But I think trying to pinpoint this to the one guy and trying to frame him is fruitless and frankly inaccurate.
He was asked on if errors in communication or schematics led to some of the touchdowns conceded over the last few weeks. And Tomlin's short answer, a little bit of both.
Yeah, whenever you're busting, 5, 6, 7 plays in a game, it's typically multiple things. I do wonder on the Kelce touchdown, was it a coverage bust or was that just a schematic win or loss for the Steelers and win for the Chiefs? Because Pittsburgh's in cover 2. Should somebody carry that, match that? Pittsburgh is a spot dropping kind of team. I'm not sure how to interpret that play.
It's so hard to kind of to identify A, if there was indeed a bust, and B, who was at the cause of that.
Right, because
it feels because it's a vacated, it was a good scheme. It was a little bit of extended play.
Mahomes had rolled out there, so that did make it extended. But yeah, Pittsburgh's in cover 2, so it's 2 deep, 5 under. If it's played as it's drawn up on the whiteboard, everyone is in the right spots. The question is, should somebody be carrying, multiple vertical routes? So it's number 1 on the outside went vertical, and that pushed the corner and took the safety who's got deep half responsibility to the sideline. And Kelce kind of slow played his route and then went vertical down the seam. And so do you have to match that? That's what pattern matching does instead of just spot dropping. Pittsburgh is more of a spot dropping team than most. And so I don't know what the rules are there, but that's kind of a moment where I do question, was it really a bust or was it just Pittsburgh having a more basic scheme?
Yeah. It's hard to define, not knowing exactly what the call was.
Mike Tomlin also was asked about the workload and how it gets divvied up between Cam Sutton and Beanie Bishop. Sutton played a bunch of snaps, about 2/3 of the snaps against the Chiefs. Beanie Bishop had a goose egg, did not play a single snap, and Tomlin likened it to Landon Roberts and Peyton Wilson. Just depends on circumstance and matchup. And so Tomlin just kind of said a big old, it depends on how much and how often and when and where Sutton and Beanie play.
And if you roll back to that last Bengals game, that was one of the first games where Sutton played an even larger number of snaps in that game. Was it not? Played 45 in that game, 73%, whereas Beanie Bishop played just 10% in that game.
Right. In that game, Sutton played all sub-package snaps essentially, and Beanie only played in dime. And Pittsburgh against the Chiefs did not have a single dime snap. They ran different 3 safety packages and some different wrinkles, and that's where Beanie got shut out. So we'll see if Pittsburgh has the same strategy again.
All right.
Anything else from Tomlin, Dave?
No, I think we ripped through it pretty well.
Just as obvious as it is, Tomlin's final question and answer was about what the offense has to do to get right against the Bengals. Tomlin says, quote, take care of the football and stay on schedule. I think when we stay on the schedule and we take care of the football, we're a formidable group. And at times, particularly in the last several weeks, we've been spotty in those regards. So I do think the solutions are simple for Pittsburgh to get right, but they just simply have not gotten them right. Take care of the football, be better with the run game, have more volume, have fewer coverage busts, take advantage of opportunities defensively to take the football away. It all sounds good on the bumper sticker, like you say, but Pittsburgh has to get back to it.
Yeah, when you mix in the kind of the opening, when you talked about turnover culture and then ending it with take care of the football, stay on schedule. I mean, that's this classic how you expect the Steelers to win games this year. Not turn the football over, get takeaways, move the football, stay on schedule, and go from there. I mean, it does feel like this team has to play really solid in all three phases. They're not like a Detroit Lions team that, okay, our defense is banged up, go slap 40 on the board, that way. And I thought you had an interesting kind of tweet last night was the fact that what they ended up scoring 40, the Lions last night. That's exactly how much the Steelers have scored point wise in their last three games. So Mike Tomlin's brand of football is protect it, take it away, maximize your chances, get off the field in situational situations, third downs in red zone, and go to the locker room with a 3 or 5 point win.
Yeah, but even the Lions, despite that defense being so hampered by injuries, again, what it comes down to for me in today's NFL is it is really hard to be like an elite 2000 Ravens 76 Steelers defense that just does not allow people to move the football on you. There's too many good passing games, too many good quarterbacks, even though it's scarcity as a whole, too many good play callers and schemes. The elixir, the counter is splash plays, taking the ball away that steal possessions, that shorten fields, that really can change the tenor of a game. Detroit, they won the turnover battle 2-0. They picked off Brock Purdy twice in that game. And so those were key moments where your defense is not playing well. The solution is not to try to find a way to force a bunch of 3 and outs. That's really unattainable, but take the football away and take advantage of opportunities. And their stud safety, Kirby Joseph, had a interception in center field. And so that's what Pittsburgh has done. The Pittsburgh's defense is obviously better and can be more formidable overall, but they take the football away. That has been their MO for since really 2019. And Pittsburgh has not done that in recent weeks. And that's why this defense, in conjunction with the communication issues, that's why they're struggling.
Right. Especially these last several games. Football's been a loose for them to be able to have. They haven't come up with them. And then on the flip side, they've turned the football over in a couple of red zone situations, obviously.
Yeah. Combine those things. And it's no secret why Pittsburgh has lost their last 3 by that combined margin of 90 to 40. All right, Dave, just some quick housekeeping. Pittsburgh working out some players on Monday. This may be more reflective of potential reserve future contract names for after the Steelers season ends. It's a bunch of offensive linemen, including Mason McCormick's former teammate in college, Garrett Greenfield, Alec Lindstrom, Cole Spencer. Did work out a quarterback, Zach Anixstad. That's the second time he's worked out this year. Not entirely sure if that's just to kind of help maybe with some center snapping kind of a thing or whatever the case is there. So it's more of a minor note. Wouldn't take a lot of stock into it. Pittsburgh did work out a slew of players for really the first time in a while on Monday.
Getting ready for those futures right after the season. So we'll see how many, usually a handful of these guys that you see late in the season come in for workouts do end up getting signed to futures contracts. So that's coming up quick. Hopefully not as quick. Hopefully, more than just a couple of weeks away.
And there were a couple of receivers that came in too, so all the more reason to have a quarterback to work out to throw to those guys. And of course, a quarterback could get signed too, knowing that Pittsburgh does not have any quarterbacks under contract for 2025. All right, Dave, where to from here? Ben Roethlisberger dropped his podcast on Monday night, gave his kind of interpretation of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, basically endorsed both of them, said he would, consider re-signing Russ and trying to find a way to bring back Justin Fields. Is that realistic? Is that, I know we'll talk about it more once the season officially ends and we're in full off-season mode, but is there even a chance of that happening?
It is from a cap perspective and a cash perspective. Yes, it's possible. It's just
Okay.
whether or not the price, whether or not the value is worth it with both those guys. I mean, you can make this work from a cap perspective. You can always make it work from a cap perspective. Just how bad do you want it to make it work? And then at what price are you willing to make it work at? So theoretically, it can always work, Alex. It's just, what the value is on both those players is what the guaranteed money they're looking at, how you can get the contract structured, yada yada. So theoretically, yes, you can get it work. Is it plausible more from a uh, organizational, historical, where we perceive values to be maybe at this time on both those guys? I think it is. I think it's plausible.
Let me ask you this. We've spent a lot of time and energy talking about what Russell Wilson's market value is, and we'll continue to do that until that number becomes known. What is Justin Fields' market value?
Well, if you want to go off of OTC's valuations, it's damn near $14 million a year, 13.8.
Do you think we're talking a 1 year kind of prove it deal where Fields wants something more short term? Do you think it's a little longer term? I think the structure with a Fields deal is maybe just as interesting as it would be for Russ in terms of trying to figure out what's the right number of years for a contract in his situation.
I don't believe you're going to get both quarterbacks back with Justin Fields being on a 1 year anywhere close to having a cap hit of 10 million or more. I just don't. It feels like it would have to at least be a 2 year deal, maybe even a 3 year deal. But then you're back in the same situation. Does Justin Fields want to sign and lock himself up at his age, thinking that, okay, well, I did get to play a handful of games and put down some, fairly positive tape overall last year. Do I want to go ahead and lock myself in, at this price through kind of my prime years? And I might not ever even, start but a handful more games, depending on what happens with Russ or whoever, the starter is. So that's where it becomes a little dicey. It does feel that whatever you do with Justin Fields, if you get him signed back during the offseason, it does feel like it almost has to be at least a 2 year deal, if not a 3 year deal.
Right. And you wonder if Fields would want to kind of lock himself in like that. It'll be interesting to see how the NFL at large views him. Last year, they really viewed him as a non-starter in the literal sense of that, not a starting quarterback, and that's how he ended up in Pittsburgh as the backup. Remember, Philadelphia had interest in him as their backup to Jalen Hurts, and that didn't work out. And so he goes to Pittsburgh, and Kenny Pickett ends up the backup in Philadelphia. But with a weaker draft class, at least the perception of a weaker draft class, and probably fewer free agent options than a year ago, and given that Fields put on better tape in Pittsburgh than he had in Chicago, I got to think there's going to be at least more intrigue, more interest league-wide about Fields than there was an offseason ago.
Especially when you look at his left-off point from earlier this season.
Yeah, not that he liked being replaced, but not a bad time to do it, to be 4-2 and playing pretty good football overall. Even if that Raiders game was, I think, maybe his poorest performance of the season, despite the big victory. But just in totality, Fields, because again, the knock on Fields was he could not take care of the football. He was too turnover prone. He was too volatile. He was just too mistake prone. If you're a quarterback that can't secure the football and has too much negativity, you got to be like incredible with your good. Like you have to be like really, really fantastic for teams to trust you. That's kind of the Jameis Winston thing of, okay, you're kind of more of a backup than a starter because we just can't trust you for 17 games to play smart football and not cost us a couple of games with reckless play. But Fields, within the right structure, showed he could take care of the football. And that I think is going to really be huge in the minds of decision makers when it comes to evaluating, can Fields start for us?
Where Fields left off at right now, earlier in the season, would he be deemed at least, a top 3-4 backup quarterback in the NFL?
I don't have a ranking of that. All I'm really concerned is what other free agent quarterbacks will be better than him. And it's a little hard to know who all will be available. Will Russ go out there? Will Kirk Cousins be cut? Seems likely. Will Sam Darnold escape Minnesota? Seems less likely, but a big question there. To me, Fields really could be the number one quarterback come free agency.
Yeah, let's take a look real quick at the free agent track.
Because the names are not impressive. I mean, again, you never know who might get added and how quickly things can change, I should say. But Kirk Cousins, is he going to be more attractive than Justin Fields? It's hard for me to buy that, given that Cousins is older and collapsed and got benched than a younger, seemingly ascending Justin Fields.
All right, let's roll through these. I've got them sorted by current APY of guys that are scheduled to be either have their contracts void or be unrestricted free agents. Sam Darnold, he's the hot commodity right now, right? He's the head of the class right now, and Minnesota's got to decide whether they want to keep him and keep the young quarterback that they drafted, kind of let him groom a little bit, simmer a little bit longer there. So Sam Darnold is going to be the hot commodity. I think we both agree on that. And then if you look at current APY for the rest of the list, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, Drew Lock, another Broncos quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. Justin Fields is next in the APY. Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones, Carson Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo, Case Keenum, and then Mason Rudolph. And I refuse to go further than that down the list because we hit Easton Stick.
Fair. Never go full Easton Stick. So yeah, clearly Fields is the best name on that list, I would say, besides Darnold, obviously, who I don't expect to hit free agency.
So he's going. In other words, long story short, Fields is going to have a market, and probably a one that could end up with him close to maybe that estimation that OT over the cap has.
Yeah, you would think the market should be more robust than it was a year ago. I mean, the question is, though, is Fields still viewed as a starter ultimately, or is he going to be lumped in as maybe he can come in and we can bring somebody else in and compete and see how things go? I just don't know. But I just have to assume that just kind of basic market supply and demand, there is fewer quarterback options for teams to have this year than last year, and that's going to help drive up the price on all these guys, but especially somebody like Fields, the most tantalizing name of that group. Now, there are some others that will get some looks, I'm sure. Jameis Winston had his moments, but again, to me, a really volatile quarterback. Mason Rudolph, Drew Lock has played well this past week against the Colts. If he could have a good regular season finale, maybe he can try to not get a lot of money, but at least compete for a backup spot somewhere in 2025. But with that, and again, the real sticking point is this weak quarterback draft class, because last year you had 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12 picks. You will not have 6 go in the top 12 picks this year. There might be 2 first round, early round type of prospects in Shedeur Sanders from Colorado and Cam Ward from Miami. After that, it's going to be a pretty light group, it seems like, especially with guys like Drew Holler going back to Penn State.
All right, so let's get back to the talking point of, is it plausible? Can the Steelers make it work, get both quarterbacks back? Yes. I guess the next thing is, how probable is it?
I don't find it likely. My expectation is that both guys will not be back. One will be back, much more likely Wilson than Fields. Just given that Fields will likely have a market and chance to go compete for a job somewhere else, something like he really would not get to do in Pittsburgh, especially if they lock up Wilson to a big money long-term deal, which obviously cements him as starter.
All right, fair. I would agree with that. Further we get into this, it the probability factor seems less now that we've walked through what Fields' market value is and kind of where we kind of think Russell Wilson's is. All right. So if let's say you decide on not going the route of Wilson, but you do want to bring back Fields, do you also try to bring back Kyle Allen? And then what?
I think no matter if you bring back Wilson or Fields, you can bring back Kyle Allen.
Sure.
I mean, it's not going to cost you more than a song and a dance. So that really, I think, doesn't matter. I think they probably will look to bring, because they'd like to have that veteran behind, even in that third spot. So I wonder, will they go sign a couple veteran quarterbacks? If they go, at least sign one where they re-sign Russ, let's say, they re-sign Kyle Allen. They like to have that third vet there as a just in case. And Pittsburgh has had to use just in case before, like in 2023 with Mason Rudolph. And so do you go sign an Easton Stick at that point, who has a relationship with Pittsburgh's quarterback coach and Tom Arth out there with the Chargers? You wonder if that may be the case.
Okay. All right,
Dave.
We got plenty of time to talk about that.
We do. Let's talk about Patrick Queen and just kind of bouncing off the Mike Tomlin presser and miscommunication, all that kind of stuff. Queen speaking with the media on Monday. I thought he had some interesting comments about kind of the root cause of these communication breakdowns. He says, quote, "I think it's just been a little second guessing here and there, just not having full faith. I think that's the biggest thing. I think if we just go out there, trust each other, go out there, just play freely, play like us, just play, have fun, play fast, play physical, do the things the Steelers can do, I think we'll be fine," end quote. And so, interesting comment to sit there and say, just not having full faith in one another this late in the season.
And why is that a problem this late in the season would be my rebuttal.
It's a great question. I wish I could answer, but it is a problem, obviously.
Look, we've seen this defense play earlier, especially, before the bye. We've seen this defense play a lot better, albeit, against some teams that they were probably expected to beat, obviously, here. They did play for the way they were attacked by the Ravens in that first game, did play reasonably well in that game. This defense, when it's operating on all cylinders and has all their guys available to them, we know that they have the ability to keep the score down. And that's the main goal here, right? Keep the score down, give your offense a chance to, score 22, 23 points and win the game. Moving forward from this point on right now, you expect to have a full complement of your defense back. Remember, you went through several games there without having either Herbig or Highsmith. You missed Montravius Adams for a couple of games, right? Who else? With Deshaun Elliott missed time. Who else has missed some time within this defense?
Did you mention Ogunjobi?
Ogunjobi missed a couple of games within there. You should have that full complement of guys back now heading into the playoffs there. So, you should be expected to see. We should expect to see the things that this defense was able to accomplish, in a lot of their wins. And specifically, when you look at red zone, we broke that down a lot recently, made that a talking point there. They've got to be better in the red zone, and they just got to stop the miscommunication, blown coverages, and specifically in the red zone there. So if they're able to do that, I mean, look, it's going to take a damn near perfect game against the Bengals. The Bengals, all year have done well offensively. Their defense has been the big question here. But if you can keep the score down against the Bengals, you're going to give yourself a shot to win that game. And then, we'll see if you win that game, you go on the road against the Texans. And this is the same Texans, or not same, but a Texans team that beat them in 2023, but you do like your chances with all that the Texans have gone through this year as well too. So you need to get all that stuff worked. This is and we said this the other day, this is a get right week for the Steelers on both sides of the ball, and especially defense, to get this thing going in the right direction heading into the playoffs.
And we'll save the conversation more for our Friday show, but this Bengals defense has also improved. That's not really gotten much attention, but they've in 4 straight games held the opposition to no more than 27 points, which doesn't sound like a fantastic stat, but given where they were giving up 30 plus in half their games prior to that, there has been improvement there as well. And so that defense may not be quite as leaky as it was early in the season, and especially in that first matchup.
All right, right.
All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's talk kind of our Spotify wrapped 2024 of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the biggest, most discussed and most listened to things probably people had to endure from us throughout the season. The biggest storylines of 2024 for Pittsburgh and a couple to watch for in 2025. Have an article on that on the site this morning. You guys can go check out. I'll just rattle off the top 5 storylines. And Dave, you can provide your input if any should be added or removed or your thoughts on that. So biggest storylines that define Pittsburgh's 2024. 1, Russell Wilson in. Can he pick it out? Mike Tomlin pivoting to Wilson midseason. Really the whole quarterback shuffle, which was drastic for the Steelers standards. 2, Cam Hayward's resurgence. A lot of consternation about giving Hayward the extension and wondering did he have anything left in the tank coming off injury, being 35. He's having a great season and really one of the best ever for somebody of his age. 3, Chris Boswell. I would say this season has been historically good for him. 40 field goals, only missed 3 kicks all year, 1 block, 2 long distance misses, 12 kicks from 50 plus yards. It's been just a really, really great season for Chris Boswell. 4, everything George Pickens. How many times do we have to talk about some George Pickens story, including in this episode? And then, of course, it feels like a little while ago, but all the receiver rumors, the Brandon Ayuk saga that went on for like literally the entire offseason into the summer, and then Devontae Adams and Christian Kirk and all the potential receivers that ended in Mike Williams and 8 receptions. And then finally, this 3-game losing streak of losing to the Eagles, to the Ravens, and the Chiefs in 11 days. So that's really creating a sour taste in our mouths to exit 2024.
Yeah, quite a mouthful there. I think you said a lot within that there. Boy, that wide receiver thing went on forever, did it not?
God, that sucked so much. The Ayuk thing, I hope we never have to do anything like that again. I'm afraid we will, especially with George Pickens' contract talks in 2025, but that was just exhausting.
It was. I think you did right there with talking about the Russell Wilson thing and where you have that ranked. I do like also the Cameron Hayward angle. Let's see, what else did you have down in there?
Boswell having that historical season, and then just this 3-game losing streak. I didn't rank them in any particular order, but those are just the 5 that came to mind. Were there any other storylines of the season, the entire 2024, that maybe should have been added? Anything else you could?
The Joey Porter penalties probably probably wouldn't be top 5, but that was some discussion that I think we've talked about quite a bit. I think the overall positive play of a Deshaun Elliott, something else that we've kind of focused on a little bit there as well. And I think a more minor thing is the positive play of the Zach Frazier. We've talked about all these. I don't think would have cracked that top 5, but they were kind of storylines, if you will. Oh, you also have, I see your honorable mentions down here. The Minka Fitzpatrick. Are they using them right? Interception, less streak. Let's see, the hard knock stuff. Yeah, I suppose. I think you did good in those top 5 there.
What are you watching for in the calendar year 2025? Not even literally has to be like next season, but just starting tomorrow, January 1, 2025 and beyond. What are kind of your storylines to potentially watch for?
Well, if you're including this season, and I think you've got that up number one, how Pittsburgh finishes here. Can they get back on track against Cincinnati? Can they get in? Can they win at least one playoff game? And if they do win at least one, can they win a second one there? So yeah, I think basically, can this team finish on a positive note with two more at least two more wins here, and then we'll talk about it after that. So yeah, that's got to be first and foremost. Everything related to George Pickens, you have number two. I definitely get that. We talked even before the season started how we're going to be talking a lot about George Pickens after the 2024 season. There's been a lot of speculation, I think, from even beat writers or not so much speculation about thoughts about maybe what they would do. You're starting to hear a lot of rumblings that the Steelers should potentially consider maybe trading George Pickens. So that will be definitely something to watch moving forward there. We just talked about the quarterback situation into the offseason. They're probably going to want to get that solved as soon as possible to know who their quarterback's going to be, right?
Yeah, I think that'll be the first big question in terms of once the 2024 season ends and Pittsburgh starts evaluating next season, the biggest storyline we'll be talking about quite a bit, and that's kind of how I framed it. The ones that we'll be talking about and writing about in the national media will be talking about a ton will be who is the quarterback of the future or at least of 2025 for Pittsburgh. And right now it seems more likely than not to be Russell Wilson, but until ink meets paper, then we're all kind of speculating and guessing, and especially what's the market value? Is it a 2-year deal, 3-year deal? What is the structure? Russ wants to play until his early 40s. Does Pittsburgh want to give him a 5-year deal? Probably not. But how do you square all those things? So I think that'll be the most urgent question Pittsburgh will have to answer by mid-March.
All right. What else do you have on the list here? Biggest first round need. Obviously, we'll get into what this team could use in the draft. Yeah, you got who is quarterback number one, number 5 down here, and then is there more free agency splash? This team absolutely needs to get, regardless of what happens with George Pickens, that wide receiver room needs help.
I would expect a lot of discussion about T. Higgins come the offseason, come near free agency, and he'll be in high demand and still could even return to the Bengals. That seems like it's more of a possibility than it was when the season began, but I think a lot of fans will be pining to go sign T. Higgins. He will not be cheap, and I find it less likely to occur, but he'll be talked about, I'm sure, a lot on wish lists.
I will get this out here right now. I'm a big T. Higgins fan. I think he would look absolutely fantastic in a Steelers uniform. I do not, however, think that will wind up being the case.
Any particular reason? Just because of his cost or
cost, guaranteed money, market value, demand, you name it. Okay. It doesn't fit the Steelers' MO to go out there and sign the top wide receiver prize in free agency and then provide the guaranteed money that goes. It would have to be an kind of a break the precedent type of thing. Would I like to see it? Absolutely. Would you like to see it? I'm betting you would. Would most people listening to this show like it? Yes. I would need a lot of convincing from numerous people at this point right now, late in the 2024 season, to make me feel that the Steelers have a high probability of landing T. Higgins during the offseason.
Fair. I agree. Let's do a kind of a check-in on George Pickens. What do you think the odds of him getting an extension next summer are right now? I think you've kind of been lower on the idea throughout kind of this season, heading into this season. Is that the same? Has that changed either way?
Before I get classified as a hater once again, I think he's a phenomenal talent. Okay. I think he's a very, very talented guy. But for a while now, I have worried about the whole growth and development attitude, aspect of him. I wrote an article, before last Christmas, I think it was, got a lot of pushback that I'm not so sure a long-term investment of a George Pickens jersey as a gift is a wise choice. Here's the thing. I know he's missed games this year, but when he's been out, when George Pickens is not out on that field for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he is a huge part of this offense and explosive plays, yada yada. I'm not sure if the Steelers are going to be willing to chunk down kind of the money that he's wanting, and on the flip side, I'm not sure the Steelers might be able to meet what he's going to be looking for as far as guaranteed money. And what this would have to be a break the precedent kind of thing. Once again, if they do not make him the highest paid player at the wide receiver position, then odds are good that they're not going to give him fully guaranteed money past the first year. Is he going to be okay with being maybe the fourth or fifth highest paid wide receiver in the league, yet only having his first year money fully guaranteed? I'm not so sure all those things are going to line up. I understand where I do think they should entertain trading him.
Oh,
I do not think that you should just give him away, obviously, but if people come calling about him, I think you should entertain those phone calls.
And I know that's kind of an early thought there, but then how do you replace him? Because obviously, from a talent on field standpoint, if anything, this 3-game absence showed how much the team missed him. And so if you do trade him for even let's just say a day 2 pick, how do you then go out there and replace him?
It's very, very tough, obviously, because, you would have to, have an early draft pick. B, you would have to go out and, maybe not sign the top of the guy in the market, like T. Higgins, but you better not put yourself in the same position where you're looking at deficient wide receiver room. And once again, this guy is a very talented guy. And is George Pickens going to be willing to play, even if it means him saying, look, okay, that you don't want to sign me this year, this offseason to a long-term deal. Is he going to be someone willing to say, okay, I'll play for my contract, but I'm not going to be there until day 1 of the season, and then kind of go from there?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question, is assuming that because listen, no extension, even if it happens, it's not going to, in all likelihood, get done early in the offseason. It's going to be a summer pre-training camp, right before training camp at the earliest, and probably later than that. We saw Pittsburgh not do extensions with Haywood and Frymouth until pretty last second before. It was like days before the regular season began. Those guys got their extensions. So how does Pickens handle that? I think it's going to be part of the storyline, not just will they, won't they, but Pickens, does he show up for OTAs? Does he hold in during training camp? What kind of social media buzz comes up? I think he may follow the Brandon Ayuk playbook of let's stir the pot, let's engage on social media, let's go on maybe some podcasts and talk about it and kind of make sure that people don't forget about the situation that I'm in. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I think it's going to be all angles in terms of how it gets broken down.
And look, you look at the wide receiver market, free agent market as well. It's not overly exciting right now, and for all we know, will T. Higgins get tagged?
I don't know the Bengals situation. They got to obviously then pay Jamar Chase. There'll be a lot of money to start putting in the receivers. That's why most people thought that Higgins would walk, but maybe there's an appetite to try to do an extension that may be cheaper for a first-year cap situation. Yeah, again, all those things, including Pickens potentially being traded, or is that a possibility, a good idea, bad idea, will all be, again, part of that George Pickens contract future talks that we'll be writing about, I'm betting, 511 times this offseason.
Here's the thing. Will the Steelers be a better team with or without George Pickens on the field with his play, just on his field play alone, if they have George Pickens on this team in 2025? The answer is yes. To me, you want to do everything probably imaginable to try to make that happen. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get that done.
And then that's where you're opening the trade door to potentially be without him. And yes, of course, you would add receivers. So that if you trade him, we should probably table this conversation for later. But if you trade him, you have to do that before the draft, right? This is like the 49ers at IU, because if you wait till post draft, then you've lost a big avenue to get better. And that's going to accelerate a timeline that typically doesn't happen that quickly in terms of getting long-term deals done and really having serious talks before April's draft. So even that gets tricky.
Now, look, I want to make this very clear. I'm not advocating that you come out of the season and put it out there that you're trying to trade George Pickens. Okay. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say is that if it doesn't look like you're going to be able to satisfy the contract needs for him, and let's face it, I mean, he's going to want, a pretty sizable amount. If you're not able to get kind of the guaranteed money aspect of it, will be the more interesting aspect, I think, more so than the annual yearly value, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you get to and look, you'll have to, once again, like you said, you're going to have to try to escalate this thing along, or at least have a pretty good idea of where you stand and what your plan is with him before the draft. Because if you get past the draft and you don't know whether or not you're going to be able to sign him long term, and you don't know his reaction to not getting the kind of deal that he wants, this thing could obviously go all the way into training camp and beyond, right?
Absolutely. That's where I'm expecting it to go right now. Now, granted, Pittsburgh, I think regardless of Pickens, you draft a receiver early anyway because you need one. You need more than just one guy out there. So you'll likely have that rookie even later in the summer, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, going to be very interesting, clearly, in how this conversation gets shaped. I just know we'll be talking about it endlessly.
And if you do sign him to a long-term deal with guaranteed money, you past the first year, you better be careful there,
Yeah, I understand. That's the question of, do you want to re-sign him in the first place and invest and hope it works out? Who knows?
All right. Those will obviously be, we will be talking about George Pickens quite a bit, as we said, moving forward on past this year.
All right, Dave, where to from here? One thing that's going to come up here in a couple of days is Pittsburgh, maybe even later today, I'm not quite sure, will be releasing their team awards, team MVP, team rookie of the year, the chief award for the best player relationships with the media. Let's give our guesses at who maybe they'll be, or at least maybe who we would vote for if we were in that locker room right now, Dave. If you had to vote for team MVP, who would get your vote? We'll put it that way. Your selection.
I tell you, it's hard for it not to be Chris Boswell. I think it really is hard. And that's no disrespect to guys like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, but what this guy's been able to do and the points that he scored, and it's hard for it not to be Chris Boswell in my mind.
Yeah, that was what I had written down too. Now there's other options, like you said, Watt, Hayward, Russell Wilson. Obviously, the offense changed whenever he got inserted into the lineup, but it's hard to ignore Boz for having, like I said earlier, historic season.
All right.
I think rookie of the year is going to be more unanimous, close to it. Zach Frazier. Do you disagree, Dave?
I think that's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my expectation. There's other candidates to mention. Peyton Wilson. I think Mason McCormick has done well given the circumstances, but I think it'll be very clearly Zach Frazier. And if so, he'll become only the second Steelers center to ever win the Joe Green Great Performance Award. Do you know who the other center was, Dave, in Steelers history? Rookie of the year. Pretty recent one.
Oh, Marquise Pouncey.
There you go. Marquise Pouncey in 2010.
I should have had that on the tip of my tongue.
And the Chief Award for the best media quote is not exactly one people pay much attention to, and is for more the beat writers to know than us. But if you had to take a guess, or somebody that you enjoyed or thought was thoughtful in their interviews that were made public this year, Dave, who would you give the award to? Russell Wilson for his fabulous 20-minute mayoral speeches.
Boy, he sure can fill a bus, can he?
He's very good at it.
Especially after games, man. He's had some long ones after, and after losses as well too, where normally you think the guy want to get the heck out of there. But if he had been put in front of the media more, I've always enjoyed listening to Calvin Austin III talk.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, I think he's been very upfront. Obviously, Cam Hayward's out there front and cooperative. Russell Wilson. I have a feeling it'll end up being Russell Wilson, to be honest with you.
Okay. I really like your Calvin Austin suggestion. I didn't even think of him. And you're right, we don't hear a lot from him, but we heard more later in the season as his play came on strong. I think he's a really good interview. That's a great suggestion. I'll say Patrick Queen. I think he's had some honest, and sometimes media is not just about like who's your best buddy, but like who's going to give you some honest, real quotes. And Queen has certainly given some honest and real quotes, including that one we just referenced about players not having full faith in each other. So regardless of what you think about his performance or anything like that, Tristan speaking to the media. Remember, he said earlier this year about before that first Ravens game, they didn't offer me a contract, and I haven't spoken to their front office since. Like, he's offered some real transparent thoughts, and so I think the guys that can do that get my vote. He seems to be, have a pretty good relationship with the media too. So my vote, my guess, just a guess, would be Patrick Queen.
Okay, fair enough.
And we should find those out. They always come out before the final regular season game, and so it should be sometime this week that we'll hear who wins these awards.
All
right, Dave. Where to from here? Anything else to talk about that I might have missed?
I think we got through a lot of it for a Tuesday put together show.
All right, Dave. Let's get through some reader emails if we have any, and close out today's show. And we just had the episode go up that we recorded on Sunday. That went up on Monday. But any other emails that might have come in last second?
Bill writes in with a couple of games left. I'm interested in your thoughts on what you're looking for from Russ to see if he is the future. I think the move was right to go to Russ when Tomlin did, and he will play the rest of the way, but he has regressed, or at least to me has shown what his ceiling is. I'm worried we are all forgetting the progression and immense talent we saw from Fields in those first 6 games. Unless I see more out of Russ, I think Fields is the right answer for next year and beyond. What do you need to see to feel comfortable going with the 36-year-old over the 26-year-old? I need to see more of what we saw out of Russell Wilson in those first handful of 5 or whatever 6 games that he had. I think we all agree that Russell Wilson was probably going to be the version of Russell Wilson that we got was kind of what we expected. I like the fact that, fortunately, there hasn't been so many disaster plays, even though you are playing off of a recency bias of what has happened lately. I think he's done a good job overall. And as long as the guaranteed money is not outrageous, I would at least be a proponent of seeing him for at least one more season in this offense. I do think, even from what we've seen out of the both quarterbacks so far this season, assuming we don't see disasters out of Russ in the final 2 games here, I think they have a better chance with Russell Wilson of competing in 2025 than they do with Justin Fields. But we do have a couple of games left. You just hate to see the disaster plays, and that's the kind of thing that you want to see him being responsible for wins and not being responsible for losses.
Yeah, I get the
play.
Sure, I get the question. The younger option, likely the cheaper option with Fields. Do you lean there? And he played well, I thought, in totality in his 6 starts, and so I don't want to take away from that. But I think Russ still elevated this offense whenever he came. I think that was pretty clear. I know they're on a backslide right now, and a lot of that is because of turnovers and lack of takeaways defensively, and that has to get cleaned up. But that's not really been Wilson's game. He's never really been a high turnover type of guy. So to me, it's a little more blip than it is trend. But we'll watch it going forward, and obviously, if it continues, the conversation may shift. But I think Wilson is the better passer. They do like his veteran leadership. And so those things may be attractive to re-signing Wilson this offseason.
All right. Let's see. Travis Pick was back in talking about vinyl again. We had a pretty good discussion about that the other day. Russell Mocha writes in, if the Steelers offense falls flat against the Bengals, should Tomlin put in Justin Fields? Nothing against Wilson, but this team does not have the weapons to throw to. He's taking too many sacks, is turning the football over, and the offensive staff is uncreative. Fields will give the run game a boost if desperately needs. It will also allow the Steelers to control the clock while keeping the defense fresh. So he says if they fall flat against the Bengals, I'm not sure if he's saying put them in game or into playoffs there. It would have to be a pretty disastrous game, I think, right from the this would have to get out of hand real quick, Russell, for us to see Fields other than a couple of Justin Fields package plays, if you will. I think to see any more Justin Fields this season, it's hard to imagine unless it just being miserable. I mean, absolutely. And look, remember that what happened early in that game against Cincinnati through the pick six, right? And they still came back and win that game. So, I don't think that's going to happen, Russ.
I don't either, but I think the question, my interpretation of it at least was, let's say that the Russ in this offense struggles. Will there be chatter about play Fields and start Fields in the playoff game to try to do something different? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know if I would advocate for that, but it would become more of a question, I think.
Yeah. We would definitely field a lot of questions on it. I just can't see at this point Mike Tomlin making that change.
Same.
Let's see here. One more from Hunter Higgins. Just have a few things to get off my chest. I think Mike T is an awesome head coach. I think he is truly one of, if not the best leaders of men in the NFL. He knows how to get commitment out of each individual player better than anyone. I think Coach T's biggest flaw, and it is in fact a big one, not surrounding himself with great coaches under him. I think the last above average offensive coordinator working for Tomlin was Todd Haley. And even if he didn't go on to do anything else of significance in the league, Mike T and the other talking heads make hires have to do better at getting more innovative and talented coaching into the building. I know Pittsburgh would never do this, but a pass game coordinator to work with Art Smith would do wonders for this offense, in his opinion. I also think the team desperately has a big problem with executing, and as usual, this one usually falls more on the players than it does coaching, but Coach T and Terrell Austin seem to have had this issue the entire stint of Austin's tenure in the role of defensive coordinator. We are just constantly one step behind the opposition, it feels. I believe we have settled with mediocrity at the O and D coordinator positions for way too long for a team that has had a lot of talent in the past 10 years or so. Where would you weigh in? Look, you can get into the whole Mike T coaching tree thing. It's been a conversation for a long time. Do the Steelers settle for and not go out and pay the big price for the bigger names at the coordinators? Do they do too much promoting from within? Does Mike Tomlin have too much of a control freak? I mean, until you get back into the playoffs and win a playoff game and make a run at this thing, this is always going to be a conversation. It just is. I thought about this in the last 48 hours or so. Could their quality of their coaching staff top to bottom be better?
Yeah, I'm sure it could. I mean, it could always be better, A, but B, just given that they're not ascending at the end of the season, you kind of review and examine everything. There was a lot there with that question. I don't know if there was a particular point to answer.
I
Just
think
I guess
I think the overarching fact is he's not
Mhm.
surrounding himself with great coaches under him. I think if you were to boil this email down to one thing, it's
Fair.
that's the point he's trying to make.
Yeah, and there's a case to certainly be made for that. I think they had some blunders with trying to internally promote offensive coordinators, whether that was Fietner or Canada, kind of more for the sake of continuity than anything else, and that was kind of driving the bus in terms of how they hired that side of the ball, and that was a clear issue that we criticized, and that's why you saw Pittsburgh go outside the organization and not even entertain, promoting Mike Sullivan and Eddie Faulkner, the interim guys of 2023.
And then
Yeah,
look, you hear weekly people talking about Flores, Steeler fans
mhm.
saying, how the hell they let him get away,
Yeah. Again, I think that whole situation, everybody knew was a 1 year short term stopgap thing to give Flores a chance to remain in the NFL in a building that was never going to be a long term fit. And even if I know many wanted and still want, wish the team would have fired Terrell Austin and made Flores DC. I still think Flores would have gone somewhere else to go be the DC and truly run the defense himself, the way that he's doing so in Minnesota with an offensive minded head coach and Kevin O'Connell. I don't think Flores would have been in Pittsburgh for too long, and who knows, maybe he becomes a head coach here sometime soon, and all that becomes moot anyway. It's unpopular opinion, and obviously the team is struggling right now, and coaches Terrell Austin, Mike Tomlin deserve blame for that. But I do like Austin more than most fans right now, most of the fan base. I think overall this defense has been strong under his tenure. I think he's a big reason for the turnover culture change that it directly occurred once he was brought in 2019, and this defense has had still really good seasons. They were playing really well at points this season too. They were the number 6 scoring defense last year when they had no business being that good, given all the injuries that they had, etc. So I am less apt to go fire the guy than most fans are right now.
What happens is the big if. They come out, they do their job on defense and keep them 20 points or under, get a couple of takeaways, end up winning that game, go into the playoffs against Houston and do what they're supposed to do in that game, and then at least keep it close in whatever game might fall after that. Uh, you know, would that quiet some people?
Yeah, I'm sure it would. To what degree, I don't know. But again, I always try to evaluate those things after the season ends because so much still can and will change, and the postseason will really dictate how we ultimately feel about how the season went, good or bad.
Now, if they go out against Cincinnati, give up a 30 burger,
Sure.
the screams are not. It's hard to believe they could get any louder, but they will.
Right, and doubly if that happens in the postseason, which Pittsburgh has been notoriously bad at keeping scores down in recent playoff games.
All right. Got through some reader emails there. I think we're about an hour and a half in this, so I think we should wrap this up.
All right, we'll be back, I guess, on Friday. Maybe off chance we'll do one more show in between if something crazy happens. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys in 2025.
All right. Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for supporting the site and the podcast this past year. We certainly do appreciate that more than you know. Appreciate our staff and the hard work everybody has done top to bottom. Just amazing job those guys have done on the site. And once again, thanks to the listeners and the readers of the site. So you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions that way. So, Happy New Year. We'll talk to you later on this week. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.